In a recent rant to his cultists at the Turning Point USA conference, Donald Trump continued to baselessly and stupidly assert that he had unlimited authority to take whatever government document he wanted, despite every legal scholar in the country saying that's not true. Intrigued? Then click that like, subscribe, and the alert bell, and maybe even check out my Patreon link, and enjoy the video. So over the weekend at the Turning Point USA conference, which, as I recently said, was basically Woodstock for fascists, the chief fascist, the grand fascist, the supreme fascist himself, Donald Trump, made an appearance, and he gave a warbling, incoherent, deranged speech in which he ranted about authorities that he didn't have, witch hunts that he claims he's a victim of, which don't exist, and all the standard Trump things. But the funny thing is he continues to assert, despite every legal scholar in the country effectively, including conservative scholars, including former members of the Trump administration who are lifelong Republicans who probably wish that Donald Trump had the authority that he's claiming that he has. Donald Trump, in terms of the classified documents, the national defense documents, the indictments that he's received from Special Counsel Jack Smith, Donald Trump continues to assert that the whole thing is just, it's baseless because as president, he had the authority to take whatever legal document he wanted at any time for any reason. Even just on its face, it's stupid, but Donald Trump makes the claim. Hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
They indicted me.
They indicted me. He's such a satire of himself. Like he is his own lampoon. He's his own satire.
Give it. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand those words. That's very as simple as it gets. They indicted me. In other words, whatever documents a president decides to take with him, he has the absolute and unquestioned right to do so. This is a law that was passed and signed. And that's the law, and that's the way it is, and it couldn't be more clear. And I will...
That's so funny. You don't have to be a lawyer. You know, it's clear that's the way it is. And meanwhile, every lawyer in the world is actually like, no, Mr. President, that's actually not true at all. So take it from a former CIA attorney, Jack Smith, or not Jack Smith. What's his name? His name is Jeff Smith, I think. Jeff Smith. Yes, see? Too many Smiths. Listen to what he recently said about this oft-cited claim of Donald Trump that he had unlimited absolute authority, which again is stupid. Nobody has unlimited absolute authority to do anything in this country. No government official. We believe in a system of checks and balances, right? So think about that. Does a president have unlimited, absolute, unquestioned authority to just take documents? Probably not. But again, hear it from an expert.
Well, does the former president have the right under the Presidential Records Act to take whatever he wants?
No, absolutely not. The law is crystal clear. The Presidential Records Act, adopted after President Nixon, is very clear that when the moment the president leaves office, the things that are presidential papers, that is to say government property, are not his. These papers are no more his than Air Force One is his. And
of course, he probably thinks Air Force One is his, right? I mean, those documents are in his custody for the duration, just like Air Force One is in his custody for the duration of his presidency. But it's not his personal property, and he doesn't get to take it with him. I think that's actually a pretty good metaphor. So Trump is just wrong on the facts and wrong on the law, but that makes sense because he's an extraordinarily politically and legally stupid man. Here's another clip from that same speech in which he, continues on this train of thought.
Only power that NARA has,
NARA being the National Archives,
is to say to the President of the United States, pretty please, could we possibly have the documents? Quote, asking nicely is about all they can do. That's all they can do. You didn't hear this stuff. You read about espionage.
So, again, Donald Trump is not the president of the United States. He's the former president of the United States, and the National Archives, again, according to every legal scholar who's weighed in on this, certainly has the authority to demand government property back. Now, are they the sort of executive agency who has, law enforcement on the payroll? No. So what did they do? They made a referral to the Justice Department, who does have law enforcement on payroll and who does have the, the power to arrest and to seize property using lawfully executed search warrants, which is exactly what the Department of Justice did at the referral of the National Archives when Donald Trump jerked the Justice Department and National Archives around for more than a year, and that's the quote of Trump's own former Attorney General Bill Barr. It's what he did. He repeatedly lied to the National Archives and the Department of Justice about having, government property. And so what did they do? They got a search warrant. They executed the search warrant legally, and Donald Trump couldn't do anything about it. So he's just, again, wrong on the facts. But the fact of the matter is, this is the problem. When you're dealing with a fascist and somebody who has like an authoritarian inclination like Trump, and his authoritarian impulses have only gotten worse. I cannot imagine what he will attempt to do if he's elected to a second term. But this is how his brain works. He thinks that as president, he's dictator. I mean, Richard Nixon, who is basically Trump's smarter, more sophisticated predecessor within the Republican Party, once famously said that, when the president orders it, it's legal. I mean, that was a stupid thing to say, that even other Republicans were like, no, that's not true. You're not a god. You're not a king. Just because you're the chief executive doesn't mean that literally everything you do, think, and say is legal, and it doesn't mean you have absolute authority. The president is the most powerful person in the country. That's true. But he, like every other government official and other branch of government, is constrained by checks and balances. The fact of the matter is that the documents that Donald Trump took were national defense documents about nuclear capability and the United States defense capability and the defense capabilities of other countries, our allies, contingency attack plans for potential enemies. Those were not the personal property of Donald Trump. His personal diaries or whatever, maybe he could make a case for that. But this was government property that had to go back to the National Archives. He's wrong on the facts. He's wrong on the law. And if this is the way he's going, he is almost certainly doomed in his upcoming trial against Special Counsel Jack Smith.